Okay, I think we're going there. Welcome everybody to the latest episode of the Scholar Gypsies. I'm very happy to have, I think this is the first politician that I've had on the Scholar Gypsies, Councillor Noel Thomas. He's a Galway County Councillor. He's also the chairman of the Galway
of Cllr district. Can you hear me there, Dre?
Yeah, I'm just hold on now a second. I'm getting it. Yeah, sorry, I just got a bit of feedback there. So I'm getting feedback here now. Hold on.
Do you want to do, Dre? I'll try and get rid of these and maybe it might work better.
Yeah, so
hold on a second now.
Now, is that good?
Yeah, we're back there. I think it's because I had the YouTube channel up there for a while. Sorry about that, everybody. We're with Councillor Noel Thomas. He is the Cathaoirleach of the Galway County Council, or chairman of the Galway County Council, and
Galway Municipal District.
Right. Okay. Noel came to my attention recently. That basically I saw a video or heard a video clip on Galway Bay FM with Keith Finnegan and Noel, and basically it was on the housing of 32 male, or proposed housing, we should say, of 32 male migrants into a 6-bedroom house in Rahoon. So I suppose the reason he caught my attention was he spoke very much close to what people are saying around here about the whole migration situation. But I suppose just to start with, Councillor, if you could give us a little bit of background about your own entry into politics, and we'll take it from there as to what's going on with immigration in County Galway and Ireland in general.
Yeah, look, I suppose, Jerry, my first interest in politics goes back a long, long way, and in fact, almost 30 years ago now to this date. And just a friend of mine actually who got me involved in it back at that time. But I suppose it was more to than that, because I suppose I always watched my mother in particular, who was always involved with Roscahill is the place I'm from originally. So my mother was always involved in the GA there, and always involved with the community games, and she was secretary and for years and years there of the clubs. And I suppose, watching her, I suppose, being involved in the community was probably the most thing that sparked my interest in sort of getting involved myself. And then from there, I suppose it was different people over a long period of time then in politics itself that got me interested in it, from mostly, to be honest with you, some of the older members of our community, say, who were involved in Fianna Fail over the years, and the way they had of thinking really suited me. It was all about community at the time and everything else, and I suppose that's what really sparked my interest in it. So then, I suppose in 2009, I made my first attempt to get on the election board, and they changed the scoreboard at the time. They changed it from a convention to an interview process, and I didn't make it past that process at the time, so I had to wait until the following term then in 2014 before I could run again, and I was successful in getting elected at that stage, and successful again in 2019. So I suppose we're coming to the end of this term again, so new elections are starting again now in 2024. So it doesn't be long going by, 10 years.
Now, it's a changed world since 2019, Councillor. I suppose since the last time you'd have gone on the, on the election trail, if you like. The topic we're talking about here today is immigration, basically. And I suppose what sparked your interest in Rahoon, because it's not actually in your electoral area.
Yeah, it was. I got a call on the Thursday afternoon myself from one of the residents there, and they asked me would I come up to meet them. And I kind of thought it was a bit strange myself, to be honest with you, because I said I'm a county councillor, I'm not a city councillor. So I said it to them, I explained that to them, and they just told me, they said they couldn't get a city councillor to come and meet them or whatever. So it was something that I have been watching for quite some time, because I keep my ear to the ground always. I'm always listening to people, how they're talking, and talking to people myself as well. And at this particular moment in time, I think it is probably one of the most popular topics of conversation that you can have with anybody that you meet at any place at this stage, is this whole my immigration situation that we have going on here. So anyway, I out of my own curiosity and everything else, I suppose I decided to go and meet the people there because I wanted to see for myself what sort of accommodation they were actually trying to put these people into, because I'd heard a lot of stories about it over the last couple of years. So I went there, and look, to be honest with you, I thought it was a large house, and I mean, to even be contemplating putting 32 people into a house like that, I thought it was absolute madness anyway. And I suppose it fitted perfectly into line with all of the stories that I've been hearing over the last number of years, or last year and a half, say, you could say anyway, at least. Like, so then I suppose that kind of sparked my interest more in it, and then I was willing to sort of put my voice behind that group as well to give them a bit of support in it, because there was a lot more than that in it, apart from just the inhumane side of things, like of cramming people into these buildings. Like, I mean, for the local residents there was also the insecurity that's involved with it as well. And, because, like, nobody knows where the people are coming from. They were told that it was going to be 32 males again, like, and, nobody knows whether they're vetted or anything. So you've got to kind of feel some sort of sympathy for people in this case. Like, to be very honest with you, I mean, if that was going to happen next door to myself, I would not be happy. Like, I would not be happy. I've got daughters and sons here myself, and like, I'd be worried. I would be worried, genuinely. Like, and like, I don't know where we're gone wrong in this country. Like, because, like, if you think about it, like, if I was to be a coach, say, even for, and like, Joe, you'd imagine anyone that's a coach, say, for their local football club for the underage kids or whatever, like, like 99.9% of those people are always going to be, 100% good and everything else. But, like, still, you wouldn't have a hope of even being able to go in there and participate and help them without being guarded vetted first for that, even, like, So, like, it just, our country, I'm afraid, has gone a bit mad that way.
Well, I suppose now, Lucas, you're raising, a lot of points there that I agree with. But I suppose the question I have to put to you really is, like, Fianna Fail leadership are part of this government, and there is, I can't get around the fact that, I would make the concession maybe that there might be a disconnect between us and maybe grassroots Fianna Fail. I don't know, but like, how do you square that circle? Is because, like, at the end of the day, what happened in Rahoon, to me, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, is that refugees, asylum seekers, non-Ukrainian ones, I would add as well, are kind of silently being slipped into communities and houses, kind of wink, wink, nod, nod with people. No consultation, never mind with people, but it seems to me there's no consultation with county councils and city councils to any large degree as to when, where, and why people are going into various areas of the city. So I suppose if I could get your comments on that.
I know, and look, and Jerry, I put my hands up, like, I cannot, and I've been hit with this particular point that you're making to me here on many of occasions, like, to be very honest with you. And, like, I cannot deny the fact that, no, yes, you're right, I'm a Fianna Fail councillor, and yes, you're 100% right that what's happening today is being done by Fianna Fail and Fine Gael and the Greens who are in power at the moment. And look, let's not forget, Sinn Féin are supporting what's happening here as well, to be very honest about it. But you've got to, I've been asked before, like, right? I've actually never really done it on air, say, before or anything like that, like, right? But people have asked me, like, why am I still with Fianna Fail if that's the case? Like, if I don't believe in what they're doing. But, like, all I can say to you on that, Jerry, is, like, Fianna Fail, as far as I'm concerned, always, I've been involved for 30 years or so now at this stage with Fianna Fail. And Fianna Fail was something different when I joined it. It genuinely was, like. And I always felt that they were the best party for the community and everything else. But how would I describe it? It feels, for the likes of me, and not just me now, there's many other Fianna Fail member out there that feels the same way, like, but it feels like as if our party has been infiltrated by people who don't have the same beliefs that we have. And unfortunately, they have control of it now. And that's it's an unfortunate way. But the question you got to ask yourself is then, like, should you run away from the organization that you always believed in being the good organization, like, and let these sort of people, destroy it more and more all the time, or should you stay and try and fight to try and bring it back again to what it was? And that's a very difficult decision to make. What you do, right?
Oh, look, I'm not trying to well, let's put it this way. I can kind of accept what you're saying there, but I suppose, if you like, we're at the bottom of the ninth, to use the baseball terms, I feel. And, so people have to come out swinging. Like politicians, the way I look at it, I accept local politicians mightn't have that much, influence. And I do think that I do accept that there is kind of some sort of, I won't say takeover of the party, not just Fianna Fáil, but I would probably say the same about Fine Gael, Sinn Féin as well. And they all seem to be consumed by an ideology that, parts of it people might agree with, but it's not coming out of the grassroots of Ireland, a lot of this stuff.
It has gone so far away from the grassroots of Ireland that it's just impossible to imagine how it came to that. Like I just cannot stomach this at all. I can't figure out how it came to this at all. But like I've said to you, like the vast majority, not all of them now, there are a few, but the vast majority of senior politicians in the Dáil at the moment seem to have completely lost connect with the grassroots of this country. Completely seem to have lost it. Like they don't see, as I said to you a while ago, Jerry, like I said to you, I'm all the time on the ground talking to people. Everybody I'm talking to is telling me that what's going on is wrong. But yet we have our senior politicians telling us that, no, this is all right. So...
Well, it's not, it's definitely... Sorry to interrupt you. Well, there's two things I bring in there, right? Because what really kind of set me going, yes, on that interview with you wasn't anything you said, but it was something Keith Finnegan said, and it was along the lines of, well, we all have to accept the new reality. And if I tie that into what we hear out of senior politicians, where they more or less say things like, well, no, you don't have the right to stop 32 people going into your community, or 40, or any say in what goes into your community. No, I'm probably, I'm sure we're around the same stamp in age. And I remember the battles between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, in the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. No politician on either party would come out and say stuff like that.
No.
Not even, maybe even 10 years ago. So I suppose my next question is, you're brave enough to have come out, and I know you've been doing radio interviews since. Have you got any pushback from kind of senior Fianna Fáil people since you've kind of been doing the rounds?
No, I haven't. And what's interesting in that is like that I have actually sent correspondence like to vast majority of our ministers now at this stage, or anyone that would have any connection whatsoever in relation to this. The Minister of Finance, the Taoiseach, the Taoiseach, I have the Minister of Education, and another few of them like, and not as much as a reply have I received from any of them. Like this is the level of discontent we're getting. So you can imagine like I am a local politician, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is how our ministers and our TDs will treat the likes of me. So, John, what hope does any ordinary member of the public have? This is the shocking part of it.
Yeah, but I suppose that's what was interesting about what happened in Rahoon, because I think whether it was through luck or happenstance, the guy that did the protest was a Shantel fella, a strong Galway character, and got a protest. I say protest. These were women and children and families.
But more importantly, there were actually, what was interesting was they were very multicultural as well.
Yeah,
I was looking at myself. That's one thing I noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we have to stop apologizing. When you speak on this subject, and there's a couple other subjects in this country you can't, nobody wants to hear from you about. But what I would say is, we don't why would anyone assume any of us are racist? You know what I mean? We seem to be defending ourselves from what exactly? My two kids are half Lithuanian, half Irish. So not that makes it, but I'm I understand. Ordinary people understand the nuances of migration. They don't need to be, they know what's going on.
Yeah, but this whole new thing of labeling people, of being a racist or being far right or far left or whatever, you see, it's a great way of silencing people. And then you get the media then to come along and agree with this as well. And they get that narrative out there every day in the media, and every day from the politicians are talking about the far left, the far right, these flipping racists, they're talking about this. They get that message sinks into people. So then when you actually get involved in a debate or potential to be involved in a debate, all they've got to do is actually spout a bit of this out. Again, say, that person is far right, or that person is a racist or whatever, and it actually serves a great purpose in actually fighting you, because and that's the fear that's there with an awful lot of politicians today, to be very honest with you, because they're afraid that that's what they're going to get labelled.
Now, tell me, what was your you've obviously taken the decision to walk a different path on this subject now in the recent day. Was there a trigger point for you that just says, right, enough is enough, or what was it?
I think over the last while there's been several trigger points, and it's I'm always and ever been a complete advocate of free speech, number one. And I honestly, I do not mind. If somebody wants to tackle me and challenge me on something, I'm quite happy to do so. And it's up to me then whether to defend myself on the subject that we're talking about or whatever else. And if I fail to do that, that's my fault. But I mean, you should never be denied the opportunity for debate. And you should never be afraid of what somebody says, because you're never going to have a situation where somebody is always going to, keep you happy and saying only what you want to hear. People are going to say things to me and to lots of other politicians that we hate to hear, but so be it. That's their right to be able to do that. And to see the way our world is going at the moment, it's our country anyway in particular, we're soon be denied every right like that. And that's scary, And I don't care. We were talking earlier on there, you were saying about the interview with Keith Finnegan, and say how, this is the new norm or whatever, it's not the new norm. It's only the new norm if we accept it as being the new norm. We don't have to do that. But it's becoming dangerously close to being too late if people don't actually start standing up now. I suppose that's one of the main reasons that I actually came out and decided to speak my mind on this. I'm not saying anything wrong. I'm not saying anything that's racist. I'm not, what would you call inciting hatred anywhere. I'm not doing anything like that. I mean, I had done an interview earlier on with another radio station, and the same thing. I mean, I actually spoke about the actual, the nice aspect of interracial cultures, and interracial societies, I should say. You take my own village, and this is what I was saying earlier on today. Take my own village at my Cllr, right? So we've people from all different creeds in my Cllr, to be honest with you, and one thing, and I laugh about it, is that I thought I'd never ever dreamed that I'd ever see something like this in my life, but we actually have a cricket team in my Cllr now, and it's made up of a bunch of Indians, but they're all, they're fantastic people. These are people who are integrated into our community, and they're all part of the community, So, but if you flood people in, now what we're talking about, if you flood people in vast groups, then you destroy the integration side of things completely, and you create social isolation, you could say, in different parts, in different sectors of communities. And that just doesn't work. It's gas when you think about it, when you think we've got the minister that's in charge of this, Roger Gorman, he's labelled as the Minister for Integration. But in reality, he's the Minister for Separation, if you ask me.
Well, he's the I don't know what he's the minister for, because he's not. We might come back to him. Look, the way I look at the immigration issue at the moment is like this. Take this statistic, and this is from gov.ie. Last year, we issued 200, between work visas, student visas, renewal of visas, asylum seekers, refugees, the whole lot. We issued 250,000 work visas yesterday. That's 5% of our population. Mm-hmm. I see this, and the reason I'm animated about it, as that we're making decisions that are going to affect this country for generations to come. And I'm just wondering, do you see it in those terms? I'm specifically talking at the rate we've been going at since March of last year. Mm-hmm. If we have, the way I look at this, if we have another year and a half like the one just passed, well, it's too late. Do you know what I mean?
That is the danger. That is the danger. And I can see it. Look, I'll pick my own hometown of Galway. I can already see it. And there are parts of Galway that are, let's just say, they're becoming different cultural areas, you could say, completely. The integration side, what I said earlier on, is doesn't exist there. I will say it, and it's the first time I actually said it, it was back at around about Easter time. Actually, we were doing some of the Easter commemoration events and stuff like that at the time inside in Galway City, and for the first time ever, I was looking around me inside in Air Square in Galway, and like I'm a grown man fairly well, I have to handle myself and all the rest, like, but I have to say there was certain aspects of say the centre of Galway City at the moment that kind of intimidate myself even. You know, you would like, I mean, to be honest with you, like, you know, from bordering on antisocial behaviour to, you know, a bit of alcoholism and you know, groups like that kind of hanging around, and it becomes a little bit intimidating. And I mean, if it's like that now, it's the scary part is that it'll probably get worse.
Absolutely, but like it's never mind Galway. It's like getting that in. Like I'm live in Tuam, and I can feel the changes. Like even here with what's happened. But like it is impossible. I suppose getting back to the Indian cricket point you made there. You know, if you bring in 2 or 3 families or 4 families of a particular nationality to a village the size of Moycullen, that's okay. You know, you can integrate that. But like if you bring in 50 families, you're going to eventually create a separate, well, I won't say ghetto, but like, you know, they're going to have their interaction.
You're right. They're going to stay in their own society, say, in the area. It'd be like if, let's just say, God forbid, if war broke out in Ireland tomorrow morning, and let's just say 200 or 300 of us managed to get on a plane somewhere and we went to another country and we arrive like that, like we're going to form our own group. And that's more than likely the way we're going to stay. You know, that's the reality of it. There's no point trying to say anything else because that's more than likely what's going to happen. Look, one of the best examples we have of all of this where it's all gone wrong, and I think it's a little bit too little too late for them at this stage, was Sweden. In 2015, I mean, they took in a massive amount of people at the time. I think it was the Syrian war or whatever, but they took in something like 160,000 people all of a shot. And like it has turned into be a disaster for them. It's an absolute disaster. Like as what was the name of the Prime Minister that Anderson, wasn't it? I think that
I can't think of it.
Anderson she was. I think she's gone now, I think anyway. But I think she came out with a statement there herself at the time, but she just said that you know, the vast numbers of migration that has led to parallel societies and gang violence, and that's what it did lead to, like, because people weren't integrated properly. Like, and also, this is it's a natural progression when people come into a country in that means. Like now they've gone out the moment they've tightened up their borders completely from what I've been told, and they're making it far more difficult for people to actually get in there. So they had no choice. But I said it's probably too late for them though. I seen a video online where journalists went into a part of some part of Stockholm, I think it was, and they were trying to do an interview in there, and like they were warned first by the police over there not to even go there, but they still went and done that. And the lead journalist, I think, in the group, she was a female, like, but I mean, like, she was attacked on the spot. It was all seen on the cameras, like. I mean, it's law itself, like. So I mean, we have an option here, like, to try.
We don't even.
We have an option here, Jerry, like, because like this country genuinely can accept a lot of people coming in, but as long as it's done properly, you know, because like we could build. I said, as long as we're integrated into the community and everybody is you know, say, obviously everybody that comes in here like has to be able to prove that they're that they're genuinely asylum seekers or that they qualify for a visa here and they're going to be working here or whatever else, like. And if you do that and they form a proper part of our communities, then there isn't really an issue, like. But the way it's going on now is just going to lead to absolute disaster. And like, but everybody has their heads buried in the sand, kind of thinking that, you know, that we have some, how would you say it at all? For some reason we have to take people in and we have no say in it. Like, we have to have a say in it. Sure, like, well,
we have to demand if we don't have a say.
People are elected, you know, to actually run their country, to protect their country, you know, but like, it doesn't look like that's what's happening now.
Well, let me ask you a question here, because you brought up a number of points there, and I just want to flick back to you talking about the hate speech legislation, because again, I have to, I have to point out, Fianna Fáil TDs voted en masse for in the Dáil for the hate speech legislation. Yet I'm here talking to you, and I suspect if I talked to Fianna Fáil, rural Fianna Fáil county councillors around the country, they would probably say the same thing. You're more or less the same views as you're expressing there, because the hate speech legislation ties into the immigration situation in this sense, is as people start self-censoring themselves, and they're already doing it because they're afraid to, they're already afraid to talk, never mind with more legislation. But take me through the process of how the Fianna Fáil party came to a situation where en masse the Fianna Fáil TDs have voted for that to go through. Was there a discussion? Was with grassroots county councillors around the Shannon, around the country? Because I see now Lisa Chambers last night came out, Fianna Fáil senator, said basically we shouldn't vote this through. So what happened in the Fianna Fáil architecture that allowed it to get to this point now? And I accept there are other parties here as well. Like, I'm not trying to have a go.
Well, I can tell you, Jerry. Like, I mean, we kind of, we kind of spoke about it there earlier on. Like, what has happened is it's the disconnect from those particular politicians to their constituents. That's what has happened. Because if they were to come down, as you said, and to get on the ground and start speaking to people, the grassroots, say again in the country, and start speaking to them, they'd soon find out that nobody is particularly in favour of doing that. Now, let's just say, to be very honest with you, when it comes to the actual importation of the asylum seekers and the immigrants and all the rest, right? Now that's 100%, no matter who you talk to. Not 100%, I shouldn't say 100%, right? But I mean, it's very, very high percentage that people think that's wrong, that we've gone too far at this stage with it, right? But when it comes to the hate speech side of things that you're talking about there, it's a little bit different, because I suppose a lot of people don't know a lot about it. And it's not something that concerns an awful lot of people either. So they kind of would think that basically, well, if the main political parties are thinking that this is okay, then surely to God, it must be okay. And that's, and that's the unfortunate side of it. Like, whereas if our politicians actually had come down to the grassroots level again and held local debates in relation to it to see what people's views were on it, and everyone was given their opinions in relation to it, then I would imagine it would be a very different view that they'd have. But I suppose that's the problem we have today, you see, that they're just said the disconnect there is huge at the moment between grassroots level and our senior politicians.
Well, is it not on you then to take the fight to them? And I'm not trying to kind of, be smart about it, but and it's the reason I go back to that Rahoon protest, because a satisfactory outcome came out of the fact that the protest group went directly to the developer or whoever owned the place and says, this isn't going here. And the last I've heard is the developer agrees with them. And he's more or less said the same as we're saying. He says, I wouldn't like those 32 men to go in beside me. And when the pressure was applied, now it's unfortunate that that's what it takes. But those 32 men are going to go to some other village or town.
Oh, yeah. So
it's not, it might be a solution for Rahoon, but at this, I think at the stage we have to,
Well, let's go back to your talk there, where you're talking about where we stand at the moment in relation to this bill. So obviously it has to go through the Shannon yet, right? So you remember going back a few years ago, there was a big push to try and get rid of the Shannon altogether, right? Mm-hmm. I was one of the people who was actually reluctant at the time to do that, because the Shannon has a purpose, and if the senators actually use their powers correctly, they actually have an important role to play there, because every bill that goes through the Dáil has to pass the Shannon afterwards. So, and it paid off for us in Galway, going back a couple of years ago, because if you remember the time they wanted to merge Galway City and County together, and that bill, we went up to the Dáil, myself and a few other councillors in Galway here, we went up as far as the Dáil, we met up with Darragh O'Brien was one of them, and I know a couple more of them at the time, and we were trying to talk to them, but to be very honest with you, they weren't doing much listening to us, and they pushed that bill straight through the Dáil, no problem at all. But we campaigned with the senators afterwards, and lucky enough, they actually heeded us, and they didn't let it go through. So like the Senate has an important role there, and I'm hoping.
That's true, councillor. But like let's brass tacks. There are Fianna Fail TDs in County Galway. They voted for the hate speech laws. So my thing to you is these people are not far away from you. Like, and I know you're only one person, but like these people are on our like we need pressure on them because the way I see it, maybe I'm wrong, is that like Dublin, the Pale, if you like, is a different country, and we didn't realize it. We're only beginning to realize it now that it's almost like a Washington DC, United States kind of effort. It's like there's a whole raft of stuff going on in that city, parts of that city that are totally disconnected to the rest of the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the truth. But I mean, sure, we can keep on around in circles in this life. But as I said to you a while ago, like, I mean, that's the problem I see here is that our senior politicians seem to be caught up in that too. And for as long as they are, I don't know what we're going to do.
Well, let's put it to you this way. You're not going to get re-elected the way like if you're like Fianna Fail County councillors, not personalise it, are going to pay the price for what senior ministers, senior politicians, senior TDs in Fianna Fail are doing to the country, not just in this issue, but on maybe some others as well. So, like, at the end of the day, you're the ones, like, the council elections are up first. No, yeah. and I do appreciate that you are the first politician I've heard really be willing to speak out on it and that. But, like, that's the reality facing Fianna Fail County councillors, and you're looking at the opinion polls as much as I am, like.
Yeah, the only one thing I'd say to you on that, Jerry, right, is and like I come here, it doesn't mean that I'm guaranteeing myself a season anyway.
Yeah.
But the one thing I will say to you on that is like that elections do seem to be an awful lot different to general elections, and party politics doesn't seem to come in as much into it when it's on the local level, because I know myself, looking personally from local level, there's the majority of people that are voting for me are not voting for me because I'm Fianna Fail, so, and that is the same with a lot of other councillors in their local areas, like, as well. I mean, it's you're on the ground every day of the week, you're working hard, you're trying to do your best for your constituents always and ever, like. And I suppose, looking, if you're doing that and doing it correctly, then you would hope, I suppose, that people recognize that, and that'd be that you'd have a chance to get re-elected again, but you may not. But that's the danger of being in politics too long.
Well, I honestly think the next two, the national elections are not going to be on local issues. They're like, I'll put it to you this way, national issues are becoming localized, like migration, like the gender ideology in school. There's a lot of this stuff. I'm sure you're hearing it.
Oh yeah.
I personally speaking, thinking that in previous election cycles, what you're saying is 100% true. You're voting for the man, and there's no point saying there won't be a certain amount of that. But like, I can't see how these issues like immigration, especially the immigration one, and maybe the gender, the transgender ideology stuff, that is a big issue with people around me here sending their kids to school, and they have enough to deal with. So I'm not so sure. I wouldn't be so sure about that aspect of it.
You're right. There's going to be a certain amount of kickback. There's no question about that. But how much, I suppose, will be answered next year, I suppose, But look at and you're right in what you're saying, because I mean, it's having a lot of impacts locally, and it's only 2 or 3 weeks ago there that we had an incident where people are signing up for their places for their new schools again now for their children for the following year, like. And we had a situation here where we've got a person who actually went on the airways talking about it, and I mean, he can't get a spot. He'd be selected his first 5 choices or whatever of schools, like, and couldn't get any of them. Mm-hmm. And the question has to be asked, like, I mean, how's that happening?
Well, do you get a sense, and I'd be interested to hear your view on this, that even the Irish politicians, they're almost like administrators of that. A lot of this is coming from Europe, or alliances even with corporate culture here, through multinational sectors, in terms of some of this stuff. Because like I've heard Leo Varadkar and even Michal Martin, it's like when they do get asked a direct question, it's almost like they're behaving like they're helpless to stop some of this stuff.
Yeah, but I don't. You see, that's another pet hate of mine, to be honest with you, because I honestly do not believe that. Because the way I look at all of this is that if the politicians have the strength to stand together and actually push back against something, I believe that can be done. But that kind of strength or will or desire doesn't seem to be there anymore much, and it seems to be easier to use an excuse to say that we can't do it because Europe says we can't do it or whatever. And that's something that I'm kind of very worried about as well. But I strongly believe myself that if all the politicians stand together and kick back against something, I think they could. But it doesn't seem to be there.
Well, I suppose it'll be there. I suppose it's up to people like you and others to kind of form maybe alliances you might have necessarily had alliances with before, like in terms of because I genuinely think we're in a situation where this has to come from the ground up to the top, not like if we start I'd be even more pessimistic about how things are going to go than I'm saying on here to you today. But like, I definitely think if there's to be a solution, it's not going to come from the top up. Like it's almost like you're going to have to teach them the lesson from the ground through the local local political system and up. What do you think?
I would agree with you 100% on that, because it's not going to change from the top. We've seen that already, and it's disappointing to think that that's the way it is. But I cannot see how it's going to change. I think that there's a new way of thinking has to come completely, as you said, from the ground again, and the whole thing has to be reset. You could say, really and truly. I don't see how it can change otherwise.
No, I agree. There's one question I want to ask you, and it's a slightly different topic. But I was in Dublin. I was in Dublin during the week to go to a press conference about. It was on basically an amendment to. I'm not sure, you might be too. I don't know how familiar you are with the Gender Recognition Act. That the legislation that came through a few years ago. But it was Padre Tobin and aim to, but it's really a policy document that came out of Leisha de Bruyne and the Countess. But basically, what they're basically trying to do is make a small amendment to get men out of women's prisons. Now, this seems to me to be like, I don't even know why we even have to be talking about this, or why people have to write. Like, I have the policy document here from the Countess, and it's like they've gone to real detail on something like this. Like, how is this stuff happening?
It's just hard to imagine, isn't it? But that just shows you the level of disconnect that's there, doesn't it? I mean, that's it. It's actually completely unimaginable. Like, when you think about it, like that was, I think, in relation to was it that the Kardashian person, was it?
Yeah, Barry Kardashian.
And I think I heard Padre Tobin actually talking about that as well at the time. And like, sure, it's an absolute and utter no-brainer. I mean, why would you even resist what he's trying to put through there?
No, but I'll tell you now. But this is where I come back to Dublin, because it's a very interesting experience. Because obviously there was only 8 or 10 people in at this thing, and three of them were journalists. Like, one was Grit and the other was the Journal, and there was myself in there nosing around. But one of the things with this document is the only studies we have and stuff like this is in the UK. But like, we have a situation where nearly 60% of the trans-identified males in prison are sex offenders. 60% nearly.
I didn't hear that figure.
As against the general population has about 16-17% of the male population are sex offenders. So we can see very black and white from the UK experience is that this is a loophole that's going to be used by sex offenders to,
But not just by Jerry, it won't be just by sex offenders, and it won't be just by people of transgender either. Because, I mean, to be quite honest with you, wouldn't any, we'll call them warm-blooded male even, take advantage of it and declare that, actually, I'm not a male, I'm a woman, and I want to go to a female prison instead. Isn't that the way it is? Like why would you not?
Yeah.
I have to say, I have my own views on all of this stuff that's going on, right? And I have absolutely nothing against anybody who is transgender or whether they're gay or anything else. I really don't mind. It's up to people themselves what they want to do. But I mean, you come to stages in though when you've got, say, a student coming into a school and that student is declaring I'm a cat, or whatever, or or there's that kind of stuff just becomes intolerable. As somebody said today, and they were right, and I don't know where I heard it, but just talking about it, and they just said, if somebody comes into a school and they want to identify as a cat, what should be done? I suppose they said they should be treated like a cat, maybe, and put outside in a cage and given a cat litter bin to do the business in or whatever, and they reckon that by lunchtime they probably would decide that they're a human again, So, and I think that's probably a lot of what's going wrong, I suppose, in this country. Really, see, people have they've developed time to such, soft attitudes and sort of so careful that they don't offend anybody or anything like that. That I suppose they're almost encouraging people now to identify as other things as well. So, I don't know. It's mixed up world.
Absolutely. I just have a few questions coming in here from people that are just on the stream. What strategies does the councillor plan to utilise to neutralise the members of his party that are facilitating the current situation? Well, neutralise a bit strong, but I suppose it brings up the question, is there any robust debate between people like you at county council level? And let's take it this way. No Galway City councillor showed up to that estate during the week. Mm-hmm. You did. So have even at that level, have you had any conversations with Fianna Fail?
See, I've had lots of conversations, but obviously I do. Sure, I'm talking to members of one party. I'm talking to members of other political parties all the time as well. And I'm telling you, Jerry, to be honest with you, most people believe that what's going on is wrong. But just I said there's a hesitancy there to actually come out and say it, because nobody wants to be branded anything. I'm lucky enough. Look, I'm as thick-skinned as a badger, so it doesn't bother me. Only what they like, but everyone knows what I am, so it doesn't bother me.
No, well, I can take from what you're saying there is that there's no you're willing to stand up as of yet. Not too many others are following suit, in terms of, building some, even if we forget everything else, we just take County Galway as an example. I would say if 8 county councillors showed up at any of these places together and did a photo shoot, that would send a strong message to everybody up in Marion Street, Kildare Street, to say, there is discontent with the foot soldiers, and stuff like that isn't hard. This is what kind of get annoyed about, is that stuff like that isn't hard. It's hard to do in a sense once you decide to do it. It's like what you did in Galway Bay FM. I went up to those people. They're as normal as the day is long, and yet they will be, our local media will treat them like they're kind of they'll be happy for people to call them far right or this, that, and the other. And just before I got on here today, I went down for a coffee before we came on, and I took a photograph of the 3 local papers in Galway: Connacht Tribune, Tuam Herald, and a Galway Advertiser. The front page of these papers is never about any immigration issues that are going on in the country. So we've had that. We have stuff going on in Ballybrit as well, hundreds of kind of people going in there. I think that we're getting past the stage where, we need to, we need to stand up in some way, all of us together.
In a way, that's my hope is right? Is it by me sort of coming out and starting to talk about this topic? Is it maybe it'll encourage other people to do the same? Mm-hmm. I mean, they can see so far, really, to be honest with you, I'm not getting my head bitten off, And in actual fact, what I could not believe was the amount of support that came into me through Galway Bay FM, that interview that day. It was phenomenal. I was getting messages all day and the next day and the next day. And from people telling me, fair play to at least you're one the politicians that actually have the courage to stand up and say as it is or whatever. And I'm getting emails from different people all over the country in relation to it still. Like, so, but I mean, like, so it's like, I know it's difficult because this could all backfire on me yet, because there could very easily be a campaign put against me here, Jerry, to ridicule me completely about what I'm saying. And so be it. Like, I don't mind, because I said to you, like, I'm a thick-skinned person. I say what I believe, and if I do that, I'm happy with myself, one way or another.
Well, look, I think you're long enough in the tooth to know that you're on the right side of this. So I don't think if there's a hate campaign, it might be, it might be from some tight NGO, small NGO groups that are based around Galway or the university or something like that.
The loudest people out there, Jerry. That's the thing, you see.
Oh, sure. Look, if you've been talking on some of the subjects I've been talking on over the last 3 years, I know all about it. But what I'd be saying is, I think it's just that here's the thing. What I noticed in that interview, it was a lot of interesting things, but there was a point in it with Keith Finnegan I felt was going to come back at you again, because you were starting to speak off the cuff, and then it was like the text messages were coming in support, and there was this kind of, he didn't know what to do, because it was almost like they were discovering they're on the wrong side of this in Galway, like completely. So, like, I think there are things we can do. We can call out local media, like, and I have no problem doing. I live in Tuam here. Call out Tuam Herald. They've said absolutely zero about any of this stuff. It's not just Galway Bay FM. But again, do you see a problem with the amount of money that has been, again, the Fianna Fail, Fine Gael, Green coalition has been, like, our media, our government has been pumping in money to the media. And there might be an element of it, it's having an influence on what stories or what narratives they're chasing.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about that, to be very honest with you, Jerry. That's something I said I wouldn't be too awfully clued into it. But there is a danger of that happening. Yes, there is, definitely. There's no doubt about it. I mean, some of our main media sources we have here, I suppose, you'd often wonder, like, when you're listening to them, they don't ever seem to go against the government much at all. No. If you go back a number of years ago, like, it was regular enough, wasn't it, that our ministers were getting slated by the media and everything else. Like, we kind of don't see much of that anymore. Like, and when you think of it that way, you maybe, I don't know, where the money.
Look, we had massive amounts of pandemic advertising spending in all local.
In that line, yes, 100%.
And we've dedicated resources to advertising on climate and producing climate programs and all that. And I'm not going to get into all that stuff, but I'd use the analogy of with the farming sector is that, over 25 years, the farming sector has become addicted to the European grant system. And as you know, I grew up on a farm, and we waited till November to get the headage payments to pay the bills at the back end of the year, and every other farmer did. But I suppose the one thing with that is, over time, you get addicted to being told, well, this is what we can do. This is what we can do. And if we don't do it, we don't survive, kind of thing.
But isn't that the way all of culture is going at the moment, unfortunately? I mean, you look at it, comes digital currency is another thing that's coming. It's only around the corner, the way things are going. If people don't stand up and sort of put a stop to it, it's not something I'm in favor of, because again, it gives too much control. I don't think, to be honest with you, like, it might be strange coming from a politician, but I mean, I honestly don't think that that governments should have complete control over people. I really don't believe that. And that is the way we're going. Like, there's no question about it.
Well, I suppose
the Lidl store, I think it was. The Lidl store, I think, at the moment in Germany, I think it was something. But now you can't get in there without scanning some device to get in, like, and know the way to get in there.
Well, I think people are beginning to, like, it could be, I think people are beginning to appreciate their personal freedoms more and more, as they see them being kind of a bit taken here, a bit taken there. And they suddenly realize, well, just what can I do without my government getting involved in my day-to-day life? If we have digital currency, that means your central banks have access to every banking transaction you ever do in your life going forward. Like, Like,
but every action you take in your life almost is controlled in, because
Yeah.
of the monetary value of these days. Like, so it's a scary world.
no, that's fair enough. I suppose I just want to get a flavour for the reaction. Has there been any politician pick up the phone to you in the last few days? Any kind of person that you would have thought, oh, I didn't realize they'd have been a supporter of what just happened?
No.
Wow.
No, I'm telling you, like, it's amazing.
What are they afraid of? Tell me exactly what you think they're afraid of.
I think they're afraid of people's reaction, to be very honest with you, I think. And
I think 80%.
I honestly don't know why, like, because you should always be who you are, like, as far as I'm concerned, anyway. But that is the reality of it. But you know it, you're as good as anyone, I suppose. Look, it's like, you know that when certain groups come back at you, you know the force they can come at, like. And
oh yeah, look, they've
it's not nice, like, but
no, it's not. They come up, like, I've done a few things over the last couple of years, or just organizing meetings and events and stuff, and I've seen it firsthand. But what you have to realize is that, or what I came to realize was that sound on social media is, when you take it down into real life, it's a really, really small, like, it's not big. It's you're
100%, right? People get carried away with social media completely. They think that when they hear this big noise on social media, that it actually means something. But 9 out of 10 times, it actually means nothing. And I've gone to a little bit of trouble over the years, even in relation to that, where sometimes I've had a couple of little attacks myself on social media. And you actually take the time. Now, it's a pain in the ass to be doing it, like, but anyway, I've done it a couple of times. Just take the time to go and actually look at these people and check out their profiles and all. And you soon realize that these are nobodies, like, to be quite honest with you. They're faceless people who mean nothing, but they just, they're able to make a lot of noise on the social media side of things, like. Well, I suppose that's one of the main reasons that that kind of stuff doesn't bother me, like, because I kind of, I said, I've looked into it a bit and I see it. I'm not worried by them, like, not worried by them at all. Most normal people, I tell you, are reasonable. That's the way I look at it.
I think 80%, probably at least 80% of people in Galway are on the same page as us on what we're talking about. That's
I believe so myself as well. Yeah, I believe so myself.
And I don't. That's just my opinion. But
but remember, people are easily led, like, to be very honest about it, and people are looking for guidance, like. And like, if they're getting from guidance from people, that they think they should be trusted, then it's easy to see where it can go wrong that way too.
Well, yeah, and we also have the situation where the government. And again, Fianna Fail have to take their responsibility here. The government are making it very, very lucrative for a small number of people to get very, very rich over this period of time. Like, we're not far off talking about human trafficking, especially if you isolate that case up in Rahoon and stuff like that.
I said that myself on the interview with Keith Finnegan. I said it, first of all, I said it to the people I met up there, up in Letter Road that day, like, and I said it, like, I said it's something that they may not like to hear, because a lot of people don't like to hear it, but it is the way it is, like, right? So my point to him was that basically we cannot really be blaming the owners of these premises, the people that own the homes, the people that own the hotels, the people who own the industrial premises that are being converted into housing for refugees or whatever. Like, really and truly, we cannot, you cannot lay the blame solely on those, because, like, they're being handed financial packages that they can't resist. Like the money out of this is absolutely colossal. And, like, these people, same as everybody else, like, if there's an offer given to them and it's it's going to make their life better for them or whatever else, like, sure, you can't blame them for accepting it. Like,
but it's like a lad trying to give up drink and leaving 2 bottles of whiskey out beside the top of his bed, in one sense. So, but
I said it on Keith Finnegan's show that day. Like, I said, like, as far as I'm concerned, this is a form of human or of legal human trafficking, you could say, at the moment, the way things are gone. Like,
well, that's it, because and I suppose the question becomes then, if this money tap ever runs out, because it's as far as I can see, it's a European money tap. What happened, like. And one of the aspects I don't like about the Galway situation is they've gone to 2 traditionally socially deprived areas of the city, Ballybrit and Rahoon. Now, I know they're built up and they're a lot different today, like if that money tap runs out, you're talking about areas of the city that are all might be considered kind of socially deprived, and you're just creating a hotbed of trouble for the future.
It's
you know,
not.
in years.
It's not a case of if the money ever runs out, it's going to run out. That's not going to stay coming forever, and of
Yeah.
course we're going to be left with a mess, an absolute and utter disaster is what we're going to be left with. And like it's definitely going to happen. It can't happen any other way, because I have to be careful what I say in some aspects here, like, right? But I mean, I can tell you straight out, like, that information coming back to me in relation to a lot of the asylum seekers we have coming to this country, and it's coming from very, very, very good sources. And like the information I've been told is like these people have no intention of going back home again, none whatsoever. Like, you know, and we've got this sort of soft policy in relation to deportation here in this country as well, like where we may, I think it's something like, there's a high percentage of, if I'm not mistaken, there's a high percentage of asylum seekers in this country who actually are not successful in their attempts to seek asylum legally in the end, and they're actually, the deportation order is given, but it's put on their own responsibility to actually deport themselves. And correctly what's going on in this country.
And there's a separate issue, because I was writing about this a couple of months ago, but a lot of them are rejected and given leave to remain in the country indefinitely, and they kind of reapply every year. And like, if we take the asylum, I know a lot of people start, when they go down the unvetted male stuff and they start talking about, maybe focusing on kind of maybe Middle Eastern type people, but the number one asylum seeking country last year was Georgia, and they're obviously number one. That country doesn't fit the category of a country that you should be seeking asylum for. It's a safe country. It's a safe country in the Department of Justice website. Yes, they provided us with the highest number of asylum seekers last year. So these are obviously economic migrants. It's the vast majority. I'm not saying there aren't asylum seekers, but the vast majority of them are economic migrants. Would you see them that way?
It's 100%. But sure, look, you don't have to. It's easy enough to prove that. I mean, like, go back to 2019, I think it was, where we had our now Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, who came out with a statement that he came out and he told everybody that that the vast majority of migrants coming into this country were from Georgia and Albania, I think it was. I might be 100% correct about those two countries like that anyway, I think. But that's what he said. And then come to 2021, all of a sudden then our mighty minister, Roderick O'Gorman, decided to tweet in several different languages around Europe to say that, that people are welcome here and that you will no longer be put into the provisional centres, that everybody within a few months of coming here will have their own door accommodation, I think is how he put it. And like, when that happened, the floodgates really opened. And again, though, the amazing part about that was the two countries, Georgia and Albania, from the national statistics that were coming in on this, or the international statistic, I should say, on this, were showing clearly that I think that at different points that we had something like a 500% increase of people coming in from those two countries again, So,
well, look, it's like sending a signal flare up into the sky when you do stuff like this.
We have the best kind of payments as well, in particular not for Ukrainians and stuff like that. People that were supposed to be coming from Ukraine or whatever. Like, we have the best payment system of all the European countries in relation to that. So I mean, if I was fleeing from someplace, I mean, you take a quick look. And I've been told that social media in Ukraine and places like that are advertising this, come to Ireland, it's the best place you can go. So of course they're going to come. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Why wouldn't? What's the genuinely, and I know it's only an opinion, but what's the motivation of Roderick O'Gorman and some of these people, like Helen McEntee? Are they buying into some sort of an ideology that this has to be done, or what is driving it?
I honestly, it can't make sense out of that at all. You just can't, because I said to you so earlier on, they just seem they're so far removed from, say, the likes of me, right? In particular, they're so far removed from me. It's like as if they're a different species almost now at this stage, and so you wonder, is the only place they're taking their directions from is at a higher level completely. Is it coming like directly from Europe, coming directly from the likes of the WAF or something like that? You know, is
Well,
that
you
where
bring
they're getting their instructions from?
well, you bring up a very good point, because if you bring up the WEF, and I've been talking about a lot of this stuff for a long time. 12 months ago, you say WEF, and you're automatically considered a kind of some sort of conspiracy theorist. But what I would say is the World Economic Forum have like ideologies of how the world should possibly work.
And the only is that a lot of us wouldn't agree with now. It's just,
yeah, exactly. Like we're all
but then again, like look at what the WEF have done over the years. I mean, what's your man's Klaus Schwab, I think, isn't it you call him? I mean, like he has openly admitted himself that for the last number of years they have been how would you say it? Handpicking, selecting their world leaders like all throughout the world. Like he mentioned names at the time. I know that he mentioned Justin Trudeau as one. Leo Varadkar was mentioned as one. So this like these are all. Well, maybe that's where this is all coming from.
Well, I definitely know Leo Varadkar was picked as one of their young leaders, or one of these back in the day. Same with Trudeau, and I think even Ardern in New Zealand. She's gone.
Oh yes,
now.
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
But I do think what ends up happening there is that they go over to these things, they hear a bunch of kind of airy-fairy stuff that sounds good, and I think they, to a certain degree, are captured by these kind of global ideologies of we have to start stop cutting turf because to save the planet, and making these generational changes to the country that without on a wing and a prayer.
Yeah, and I suppose look, if we all aspire to have global connections in a way we do, like, but at the same time, those it shouldn't impact our actual our own countries so much that it makes them unrecognizable. It shouldn't have that sort of impact on them. We should, I suppose, we can, as I said, we can all aspire globally, but at the same time, it has to kind of come from the desire from our own what they call residents in Ireland itself to develop into whatever we want to make it like, not what some world leading organization wants us to become like.
But we're very nearly at the point where that conversation is nearly being had with us, where we can't really decide what the country, we can't really decide what the country should look like, or what the culture of it should be, or we're silly for wanting to protect our, our language or mythology or history or, whatever. And that seems to be nearly the next step, is like the Irish, we'll say the native Irish are only one other nationality on the island.
Yeah, but that's the point I was making earlier on to you. You see that we're right on the fringes of that at the moment. But this is where I still think there's time that if politicians actually stand up and say that no, we're not accepting that, I think that they have no choice then,
Oh, absolutely. Well, you'd hope they have no choice.
Moment, like let's just be honest about it. Like at the moment, like we are governed by, we're like say from a local perspective, say in the local councils, like we're governed by departments and we're governed by the local executives and the councils, where and like if you want to make life easy for yourself, you can just sort of sit back and allow the decisions that they make for you, and it makes life very easy. But unfortunately, I've chosen to make life more difficult for us.
Well, sure, look, life will be fun. Life will be a bit more exciting anyway. Let me just ask you one final question, Noel, and I appreciate that you've given me an hour of your time. How captured do you think the upper echelons of the county councils, and I don't mean the politicians, but the kind of the working structures of the county councils are, we'll say, across house, one-off housing here. Trying to get one-off housing in Galway now is like, it's almost as if you're asking to set up a nuclear power plant. What's your relationship? What way do you view that, or have you any views on it?
Oh, I have. I could sit here for another hour. But
go on.
Jerry, to be honest with you, right, again, as I said, like it's almost like as if you take the executive, say Galway County Council, whatever, like they don't want to get caught up in hassle as such. And again, say departments will dictate and senior government officials will dictate, and they will play along with it. But I mean, it's not. But the point I'm saying to you, how was I saying earlier on? Like, is that like the reality of it is, though, if you look at the core staff inside in the likes of Galway County Council or anything like that, like the vast majority of those, like, are ordinary, decent, good people who don't really like what's going on either. Like, to be honest, but they have to get support then as well, to back them up, to allow them to stop a lot of this stuff from happening, like, as well. But like housing, for example, you look at, they can make up rules as they like with it. They can, like, put it this way, you can, if you've got an industrial building now, say, right, you can convert it into accommodation for refugees, and there's an exemption there and planning for it. If I had a sick parent, for example, I couldn't build a granny flat out the back of my house, to make life easier for them. Like, so, like, it's just the great imbalance there, like. But they don't seem to want to listen either during relation to, let's touch on a subject, like, I suppose kind of close to what we're talking about. We go to, say, this whole social housing aspect of things, right? Now, it's something I was branded as every kind of a thing you could think of there, going back a couple of years ago in relation to this subject, like, because there was an application going into my local village here for the council wants to do a Part 8 to build some council houses on it as well, social houses, right? Now, I don't care. I'll say it anywhere at all. I am 100% against mass building of social housing. 100% against it. Again, it's like we talked about in relation to the refugees and all. It's integration is what it's about. So what we have done now, say, let's just take, for example, in my Cllr village, there was one section where the private developer built a lot of houses, like 49 houses or whatever. Like, every one of those houses were allocated as social housing. Couldn't stop that whatsoever. But my theory on this is that, okay, there's a certain demand for social housing now in what you call mid Connemara, which would be my area, right? It covers, I think, what is it? Up to Ard, my Cullen, and back as far as Cornamona, and like that demand, as far as I'm concerned, like, should be met on a balanced manner. So, in other words, we could put, you got Section 5s, it's only 10% now is all have to be allocated for social housing. What I would say is put it up to 30% until we meet that number. Because I've spoken to a lot of different professionals and people who are involved in some very high up organisations in relation to the development of the docklands in Dublin and stuff like this, like, and they went internationally, some of these people and everything, to check out how things could be done properly. And I've spoken to psychologists about it. I've spoken to a lot of different people, right? And the golden figure I've been given, like, everywhere is 30%. You can do 30% easy enough, and everybody just mingles in. There's nobody then that's below anyone else or anything else. Everybody, it forms the perfect community. But, like, isolating people and stigmatizing them by putting them into just social housing blocks, like, is not fair. It's not fair.
No. But what I would say, like, is we do have to, like I think 30, that kind of number is about right in terms, because I do think, like, while we don't want to stigmatize people, because we've seen in Galway with how long it took to get rid of those Rahoon flats, and then that deprivation that was associated with that side of the city that we're only getting out of now, like, really fully, before we double down on it again now. But is that towns and villages like my Cullen, very nice, very picturesque, but very expensive, the preserve of wealthy people to build houses. I do think people on the lower rungs of the ladder economically should have access to live in places like that, and they aren't just the preserve of the rich and wealthy.
And that's why I'm making the point, Jerry, that where there's a demand, that if everyone was to bring in a figure like 30%, it means that we would meet that demand much, much quicker than the method we're using at the moment. Much quicker.
Yeah.
But they won't do that because, like, to be very honest with you, like, I don't know, they seem to have something in their head at the moment that it's a kind of case of they really don't care. Oh yeah, the latest program they've launched anyway is definitely, it's a case of anybody or any local authority that has land that's owned by themselves now at the moment, doesn't matter what the circumstances are, lobbing the houses into it when we try and meet the figures that we're told by the department to meet, like.
So that in itself tells you, it's like rules are only for good times and good people, like, in terms of...
Oh, that's all. And there's no place I could show you better than that now than my Cullen village, like, because we went to extreme trouble there going back a couple of years ago in my Cullen, right? So we done what we called a 2030 plan. Now, this was organised through the university in Galway, right? So we're lucky enough we have a local professor here ourselves, and he agreed to take on the task. Now they applied for funding and they received the funding to be able to carry out this research to come up with a 2030 plan for McCullum. So in order to make a plan successful in this, Jerry, all you need is, I think, is about 12% participation, right? And it becomes, it's a very accurate plan then at that stage. Now, this guy and his colleague ended up in the end. They had, I think it was 52% participation in McCullum Village in relation to this plan. It was an actual vision of how the people of McCullum wanted to see the village develop into the future, right? Amenity and all the rest, and everything else. And it was done at the perfect time, right, when we were doing our county development plan. So I presented this 2030 plan to our forward planners inside in Galway County Council and all, with the view that obviously we would listen to the people and incorporate this 2030 plan into our county development plan. And absolutely no way. We would have nothing to do with it. We were not planners or professionals to be able to do anything like that. And I said it was done professionally, this whole thing, but absolutely no desire to listen to us at all. And
is that a problem then with the county council or with the at department level?
I suppose it's all feeding down one from one to the other.
Right.
Now, I will say, Jerry, I'm hopeful for Galway County Council. We have a new chief executive that's been taken on employment there only in the last couple of months, and there's hope that maybe the fact that we have him coming in here now, I've heard a lot of good about him. He's supposed to be a very positive sort of man and pushing for development and everything else.
But at the end of the day,
maybe he'll change it,
But Noel, at the end of the day, the risk becomes that I've heard of stories of social housing that was earmarked for housing lists, where it is going to other people, other peoples, whether they're Ukrainian or whether they're asylum seekers. But is there are we in a danger? We literally cannot solve any housing crises or even build proper planned towns in a country that's taken in tens of thousands of refugees, people fleeing war, whatever.
Well, you're right in that, Jerry, because we have a government at the moment that is desperate to satisfy somebody somewhere, in taking in all these people and ensuring that they're housed someplace. And they are so desperate to do that I suppose they're liable to do anything. As you said, they could give houses to anybody. Yeah.
You can have all the plan, the county manager can have all the plans he wants in the world, or whoever the new executive is. But at the end of the day, it sounds to me like our government is not telling the county councils, our city councils, our county councillors what they're doing or where they're putting people. Or there's no direct communication channel. At least I've heard that from kind of what you're saying, but I've also heard it from Mayo County Council as well. We're talking to a couple of councillors there.
Well, I can tell you one thing for sure. Anyway, there's no dialogue between us. Well, most of the councillors I know anyway, and our ministers or TDs or whatever. Very little.
All right. Okay. Listen, Noel, I'll leave, our councillor. We'll leave it at that. I'm very appreciative of your time and your frank opinions, and thanks for answering all my questions. So we'll just wish you well, and thanks for talking to us.
No bother. All right, Jerry. I enjoyed talking to you myself. All the best.